That little dog snapped at my dog did get aggressive. Say if somebody punched you in the face, you're gonna punch him back, right?
I'm glad, because my dog was really badly hurt.
Hurt kids come by flipping us off and flipping off the neighbors, and, you know, it's a bunch of nonsense, chaos.
Every time the dad would see me walking down the street, he would tell his daughter to go beat me up, and I'd always just try to walk away.
They were telling us to hit them, so we ended up hitting them. They were all up in our face and stuff, so we're gonna do what we had to do.
It wasn't just over my dog, it was over a lot of things.
My daughters have been in fights with other neighborhood children, and her oldest daughter, they physically fought, and it's just a mess.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Hirsch versus Wirtz, turn up. Step forward.
Writer Randy Hirsch is suing his ex-roommates, art director Teresa Wirtz and student Krista Turner for vandalizing their home by writing on the walls with crayons. Randy also claims the women slandered him.
Mr. Hirsch, you rented a house. You were going through what I gather was an acrimonious divorce.
Mm-hmm.
You ended up in the house alone. Why are you smiling? That's not a happy thing. No. Acrimonious divorce is not a happy thing. And you decided to rent rooms to sort of make up the rent. You rented the rooms to these two young ladies at different times. I assume you didn't know each other? And then you got evicted from the house. And
Correct.
You claimed that you told them that they had to leave. They stayed on after you moved out, caused damage to the house that you were going to be responsible for, and in addition, you had to spend hours and hours cleaning up after them. So you want to be compensated for the damage that they did to the house. The defendants say that you caused a substantial amount of damage to the house yourself, your daughter, who you allowed to write all over the wall with crayons. They do acknowledge, however, which is to their credit, that they were really angry with you for what they perceived as scamming them. And when they did stay on, they did cause a little damage by writing on walls and maybe doing a couple of other little things. Certainly not $2,500 worth. So I have a few questions for you, Mr. Hirsch.
Okay.
When did you lease this house?
In August of 2003.
What was the rent?
$2,400 a month plus utilities.
Did you live there with your family?
Yes.
When did they move out?
They moved out at sometime around May 15th.
When did you rent to either of these two young ladies?
I rented the room to Krista on August 14th, and I was not completely honest with her, Your Honor.
Just a second. August 14th, and what rent were you charging her?
$650 a month.
When did you rent it to this young lady?
September 14th.
What's your first name, Ms. Wirtz?
Teresa.
What were you charging Teresa in rent?
$650.
Now, you started to say that you were not completely honest.
Correct.
With one of them or both of them?
Both.
In what regard weren't you completely honest?
I had been struggling to try to save the house and had fallen a couple of months behind with the owner. I'm a struggling writer, and my income diminished, and I fell a little bit behind. And finally, I got a eviction notice sometime in the first week or two of September.
So by the time you rented to Teresa, you had already gotten your first eviction notice.
I got I received a couple.
By the time you rented to Teresa, you had already gotten, put everything down. I'm very smart. I'm getting the story. Did you pay August's rent to the landlord?
No.
Although you had received her $650.
Yes.
What about September's rent? Did you pay September's
No.
rent? And that is despite the fact that you had received her $650.
Yes.
Did either young lady give you any security deposit?
No.
Yes.
How much did you give him?
By August 15th, I had given him $1,600, which was to pay for rent until November 15th.
Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
How much of that did you return to her?
Zero.
When I moved out, I owed her $650, and the day that I moved out, I offered her a check for $600, and she threw it on the ground.
Now, how did you find out that he was evicted?
By him on September 20th, letting me know that we were going to be evicted on September 30th.
And how did you find out, Teresa, that you were going to be evicted?
The same way.
And when did you move out, Mr. Hirsch?
I moved out on the 24th of September with all my stuff.
Stuff that he had rented to us. Like, we were using the couch, we were using the TV, we were using all the facilities there, and he got up and left.
It was including the utilities. He moved out
shut off
without letting us know, and so we stayed there.
Mr. Hirsch, What would you like me to do for you today, sir?
When I had a very expensive entertainment system, Your Honor, and unfortunately I made a terrible mistake, and Teresa and I here had intimate relations on the first 2 nights. that she was there. On the 3rd night, my daughter came for visitation. I only have her on the weekends. She was criticizing the way I was raising my daughter. I told her to mind her own business. She's never been married. She doesn't have kids of her own. She slapped me across the face.
Listen to me. Listen to me. You want to tell this story? Go on Dr. Phil. I asked you a simple question.
Okay.
I said, what do you want me? I'm a judge. I'm not a therapist. You want a therapist? Go hire a therapist. What do you want me, the judge, to do for you today?
They completely covered every wall in the house with graffiti.
Yes.
I got the bill from the repairman and the handyman. The actual bill is $3,800.
Yes.
And then last night I spoke with the handyman, and he says, and also the owner, that they forgot to include the stolen drapes of $600 in this bill. The drapes were also stolen.
Just a second. Did anybody steal any drapes?
No, ma'am. We actually have...
The drapes were stolen.
Mr. Hirsch, I'm going to tell you that I think that you have real chutzpah. You defraud these 2 young ladies by taking their money, knowing full well that you are not using their money towards rent. And then when they and they acknowledge that they behave badly, you say, they can't do that to me. They can't stick me with a bill from the landlord. Do I look as if I need any help from you? So there's an old doctrine, sir, and that is the doctrine of clean hands. When you come into a court of equity, that's this court, we try to do the right thing. You're supposed to come in with clean hands. You're not supposed to have done anything wrong, because this is not a case where I'm going to compare wrongs. Well, you defrauded them, and they reacted. And how much am I going to attribute, to ascribe to each wrong? The initial sin was yours. You took their money under false pretenses. Thousands of dollars. You did not use the thousands of dollars to pay for what they expected you to pay for, which was rent, so that they wouldn't be evicted. And all the time, you knew that you were going to get thrown out on your behind. Don't come into court and ask for any favors, sir. You're not going to get any here. Your case is dismissed.
Thank you.
Excuse you may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Mary Renander is suing her former neighbors, 13-year-old Zachary Norvell and his father Randall, for the cost of jewelry Zachary stole from her home. Randall says the son of Mary's live-in boyfriend was also involved.
All rise. Yes, this is case number 372 on the calendar in the matter of Renander versus Norvell. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ladies, have a seat, please.
Ms. Renander, your complaint alleges that Mr. Norvell's son burglarized your house, took some property that didn't belong to him, some knives, and some of your jewelry. The knives were returned. The jewelry, however, according to you, was not returned, and you want Mr. Norvell to compensate you for the jewelry.
I was going to ask him if he ever got any of it back. Okay.
Now, Mr. Norvell says that at first he agreed to compensate you for some of the jewelry, and he paid you some money. How much did you give her?
I'm not exactly sure. I thought it was over, Your Honor. Around $200.
How much did he give you?
$125.
But then he stopped making payments because he found out something. Now, what's your first name?
Zachary.
Zachary. How old are you, Zachary?
13.
You know this lady?
Yes, I do.
You burglarized her house?
Her boyfriend's house.
What property did you take?
Some knives and a bag that looked like drugs, so I took it.
A bag with drugs?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to state that...
You weren't there with your son, were you?
No, ma'am.
Good. So I want you to be quiet. See, I'm going to get all the facts, Mr. Norvell. Now, Zachary, is this the first house you burglarized?
Yes, ma'am.
What made you decide to burglarize this particular house?
For drugs.
For drugs? What kind of drugs were you looking for?
Marijuana.
Why were you looking for marijuana, Zachary?
Because I had a key made so I can enter the trailer to get drugs from one of my friends that lived there.
Well, why don't you explain that to me?
All right, well, one day he was staying there on the weekend.
Who's he?
Aaron.
Who's Aaron?
Aaron.
For some reason, I don't see him.
One of my friends that used to live there. So.
Okay, now this young man, Aaron, I understand from your answer, Mr. Norvell, is the plaintiff's boyfriend's son. Is that right?
Yes.
And his name is Aaron, and he stayed with you and your boyfriend occasionally.
He stayed with his father, yes.
Tell me what Aaron had to do with this, because this is your father's defense. Your father has a defense that, well, Aaron was part of this shenanigans, so he shouldn't have to pay for anything, right? That's your defense?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, good. I didn't ask you anything else. I just want you to just plant your foot firmly in your mouth. Now, Zachary, did you plan to take this stuff with Aaron?
Yes.
It's not an answer.
Actually, at the time, yeah, I was hoping he would be there, but he wasn't there, so I went in looking for the drugs, and I took the bag that I mistaked for the drugs, and it was jewelry, and I didn't need it, so I tossed it.
What do you mean Aaron wasn't there, Zachary?
Well, I thought he would be there because it was the weekend, and he stays with his dad on the weekend sometimes.
How did you get the key?
He brought it to. He brought his dad's key that he gives him on the weekends, so he can go over there and unlock his dirt bike and stuff. And the house key was on it, so he had me make a duplicate of it.
Why did he want you to make a copy?
So we can enter the house to get drugs.
Now, when you say you tossed this jewelry, where did you toss it, Zachary?
On the side of a road, actually.
What was inside?
An old watch that was rusted up and a few earrings.
Now, what made you think this was drugs?
Because it looked like it was in the bag that the drugs is in, because he showed it to me for.
Yes.
The reason why he said before is because he broke into the house a couple days before he took anything. His dad gives him a key-making machine for Christmas or whatever.
Shh. Do you have a list of the jewelry that was there?
I do. This is a paper that he signed, too.
Okay. You signed this note?
Yes, ma'am, I did that.
Okay, you
before
signed.
I knew other things was going on.
The answer is, yes, Your Honor, I signed this note agreeing to pay her $2,250 for the jewelry.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, at some point, you decided that you weren't going to pay her for the jewelry, so you want to tell me why, sir?
Because I found out the whole truth, I believe.
Give me the truth, the whole truth, sir, as you understand it.
The truth is that the two kids had a key made so they could enter to her trailer and find the drugs, and which I figured out that obviously there's other things going on over there other than just pot being there. And I am not going to give her money for the purpose of buying more drugs for the kids to have availability to. Plus, she told me that she had found part of the jewelry.
Did you find any of the jewelry?
What I found, I had 2 bags of jewelry in his wooden box that he keeps locked.
Just answer my question. Did you find anything on this list?
No. No, I didn't.
Now, Mr. Norvell, I'm going to try to dissect what you say to me. You say that your son wasn't solely responsible.
No, ma'am, not on his own. The intent was for both kids to enter the trailer. It was a joint thing for them both to have access to the trailer.
Let me tell you something about being a criminal. Have you ever been arrested?
Yes, ma'am, once I have.
For what?
For not appearing.
Not appearing? You don't get a, you mean somebody sent you an invitation, you chose not to come, they arrested you, spent 10 days in jail?
Yes, ma'am, I was ticketed and didn't pay I didn't show up to court.
Didn't show up to court for what?
For driving violation.
Now listen to me very carefully. If you and Aaron were both arrested, and I found that, well, I think Aaron's a better kid than you are. Just because that's what I think. I think he gets better grades in school. I think that he tries harder, so I'm going to put you in jail for 3 years, and I'm only going to put him in jail for 1 year. Would that be fair?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, it would. There is nothing in the penal law, in the criminal law, in any state that says that 2 people convicted of the same crime have to get the same sentence. Blind justice doesn't mean stupid justice.
Judge Judy continues.